good evening, and welcome. Tonight we're going to be finishing this book, The World's Most Mysterious Places. I tried to finish it last night and I got too tired. So tonight we're going to read the last two chapters. Chapter 6, Off Limits, and Chapter 7, Space Odyssey. So let's enjoy some page-turning sounds while I flip to those pages. There we go. I've been really into page-turning sounds, like magazine page-turning sounds lately, so that was for all of you who enjoy it too. Let's read Off Limits, starting with Disappearing Act. In a 1964 article in Argosy, writer Vincent Gaddis first used the term Bermuda Triangle in reference to the 500,000 square miles of Atlantic Ocean bounded by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. But locals and sailors had been talking about the strange goings-on in the Devil's Triangle for hundreds of years. Some of the first accounts come from the logs Christopher Columbus kept on his first voyage to the New World in 1492. He wrote about compasses going haywire, unexplained lights, and great flames crashing into the sun, likely a meteor. Upping the intrigue, many scholars claim William Shakespeare's 1623 play The Tempest is actually written about a real shipwreck in that area. In more modern times, at least 50 ships and 20 aircraft have completely disappeared in the region, some of them pretty big to lose. All 542 feet of the USS Cyclops, plus the 300 men and 10,000 tons of manganese ore it was carrying, vanished in March 1918 without ever sending out a distress call. Two sister ships also disappeared in the same area a quarter-century later. Other times, like the case of the schooner Carroll A. Deering in 1921, the vessel washed ashore with no sign of passengers or crew. Among those unfortunate planes to tangle with the Triangle were the 5 bombers of the U.S. Navy's Flight 19 mission, which left Fort Lauderdale, Florida on December 5, 1945. With their compasses malfunctioning, pilots became extremely disoriented and flew around aimlessly until they ran out of fuel. A rescue plane was sent later that day. It, too, was lost. Neither the 27 men nor any of the aircraft were recovered. According to the Navy's official report, it was as if they had flown to Mars. Most recently, the SS El Faro and its 33-member crew sank off the coast of the Bahamas in 2015, and a private MU-2B jet from Miami lost radio contact and crashed in 2017. Witchcraft, sea monsters, and aliens have all been blamed for the incidents, although scientists are more apt to suggest causes such as underwater methane eruptions, Gulf Stream currents, and operator error. Despite its reputation, the Bermuda Triangle is actually part of a heavily trafficked route, and the number of wrecks is no higher than average. Next we have Unsafe Passage. On the border of Colombia and Panama, the Darien Gap is a treacherous wilderness where you're as likely to die from a scorpion sting or snake bite as an attack by an armed guerrilla. This inhospitable 10,000 square mile swath of land effectively separates South and Central America, and provides the only break in the world's longest road, the 18,640-mile-long Pan-American Highway, which runs from the southern tip of Argentina to Alaska. The gap is the only stretch that cannot be traveled by car. The unforgiving terrain ranges from mountainous rainforests to marshland, with more than one roaring river. Fastidiously preserved, the area is made up of 2 large national parks, through which no highway has been built, despite multiple proposals. It is barely inhabited and practically lawless. When Spanish conquistadors first failed to tame the gap, pirates and runaway slaves made it their home. Today, the territory is shared between a handful of indigenous tribes, including the Kuna and Embera-Wunan, remnants of a Colombian insurgency militia from the 1990s called the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or FARC, as well as migrant and drug smugglers. Safe passage must be negotiated with FARC members and immigration coyotes. Countless refugees trying to get to the United States have perished en route, as well as quite a few tourists, including a young Swedish backpacker who was mistaken for a spy by the FARC. Doomland. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea may be the most insulated and outwardly hostile nation on the globe. Subject to worldwide sanctions because of its widespread human rights abuses, its economy is in dismal shape. Instead of reforming, its leaders have blamed other nations for their situation and have remained hostile toward outsiders. Still, the nation has welcomed tourists, mostly from China, and have even expressed interest in boosting those numbers. Despot Kim Jong-un has stated that the country's goal is 2 million annual visitors, a big jump from the 100,000 or so who make the trip now. There are certainly some attractions. The 105-story Ryugyong Hotel, aka the Hotel of Doom, is a gargantuan logistical nightmare that began in 1989 as an attempt to erect the largest building on the Korean peninsula. Now it sits abandoned, covered by LED displays in a desperate attempt by the government to cover up its mistake. It holds the world record for tallest unoccupied building. There's also an alpine-style ski resort that Kim Jong-un had built in tribute to his days at a Swiss boarding school. Perhaps the most ironic tourist attraction is the International Friendship Exhibition, a museum that holds every gift given to one of the supreme leaders, including a bulletproof car from Joseph Stalin and a train carriage from Chairman Mao. Despite these offerings, North Korea is far from hospitable. The West is seen as an enemy by the government, and although Westerners are treated well by locals, there is no telling how far the state will go. Otto Warmbier, an American college student, became a somber reminder of this in 2016 when he was charged with subversion by the North Koreans for trying to take a propaganda poster back home. He was sentenced to 15 years, but mysteriously fell into a coma while in custody. For a year, he was kept comatose before he was finally sent home. He was hospitalized but died a week later. Next is the ultimate cliffhanger. While impressive at 24,836 feet, Gangkhar Puensum in Bhutan isn't the world's tallest mountain. No one has ever summited it, however, making it the tallest unclimbed peak. The reason isn't lack of interest, it's spiritual. More than 570,000 Bhutanese, around 3/4 of the country's population, practice Buddhism, and they believe peaks like Gangkhar Puensum house their spiritual deities. Since 1994, climbing mountains higher than 20,000 feet has been banned in order to protect their spiritual role. Conservation also plays a part. Operating under a philosophy of the 4 pillars of gross national happiness, government leaders have dedicated themselves to sustainable development, environmental protection, cultural preservation, and good governance. As such, nearly all tourists are charged a daily fee of around $240. This aggressive approach has been widely successful in preservation. 3/4 of Bhutan's dense forest still stands untouched, while in neighboring Nepal, the natural beauty is regularly trampled by visitors. Take Mount Everest, for example. As of 2020, it has been successfully climbed by 4,000 people, but Gangkhar Puensum remains untouched. Hawaiian family Robinson. Check out this gorgeous view. Back in 1864, wealthy Scottish widow Elizabeth Sinclair bought the Hawaiian island of Nihao from its indigenous people for $10,000 in gold, roughly $160,000 today. Her descendants, the Robinsons, still own Hawaii's second smallest island, and they prohibit visitors. The family has preserved the native inhabitants' culture as well as the island's environmental integrity. One current Robinson, Keith, is a skilled conservationist and has been credited with keeping several Hawaiian plants from going extinct, along with successfully recolonizing the endangered monk seals. In order to keep the property and make enough money, however, they have begun to offer occasional private tours of the land's rich and diverse jungles. They've also permitted the United States Navy to conduct drills and experiments. The Robinsons aren't the only inhabitants. An estimated 70 indigenous Nihao reside on the Forbidden Isle. There's no exact census data. They live primitively, subsisting by fishing and farming. Electricity comes from generators. In a 1977 essay in the Honolulu Star Bulletin, Keith wrote, "The Nihao people legally are our guests. Unlike tenants, they pay no rent and there are no formal obligations. We have carefully maintained their privacy and also have not permitted the kind of immigration and settlement that has submerged and destroyed the Hawaiian culture and language everywhere else." First contact. Now that's off the grid. While it's hard to get an exact number, it's estimated that scattered across the globe there are around 100 small tribes living outside mainstream society. To avoid the modern world and hold on to their ancient traditions, these people have hidden themselves in inhospitable mountain or jungle terrains. But they have an intimate knowledge of their environments, an understanding that most people in today's modern society have long ago forgotten. Many of them, like the Sentinelese and Jarawas who live on the Andaman Islands off the coast of India, rely on hunting and gathering to survive. They know where to look to find delectable honey and chew on a bee repellent plant called uyakwalin to keep them safe while foraging. They also have detailed knowledge of 150 plant and 350 animal species. In Brazil, the Awa hunt with 6-foot-tall bows and take in wild capuchin monkeys that they consider family members. Other tribes, like the Arreo in Paraguay and the Yanomami in Venezuela, apply their knowledge to grow sustainable crops. These cultures vary widely. The Arreo dwell in groups of 4 or 5 families. Men mainly hunt, while women stay home to raise the children and crops. The Yanomami, meanwhile, live in big communities of up to 400 members. All reside together in large circular structures called llanos. They make all decisions on a communal basis, rejecting any chief or leader. Most tribes have rich and deep spiritual traditions that are usually based around the importance of nature. For example, the Awa believe in a separate domain where forest spirits live. They communicate with the realm by performing ritualistic chants by moonlight. Many encounters between these tribes and mainstream societies have had harrowing results. Their isolation means that they haven't developed the same immune system responses to many diseases that we view as mild. When the Matis tribe was reached by the Brazilian government in the 1970s and 80s, 3 out of 5 villagers were lost to measles. The Awa likewise were contacted in the 1980s when the government built a railroad through their land. 91 members of the tribe died of malaria and the flu, leaving only 25 survivors. And the Sentinelese witnessed many of the neighboring tribes succumb to the flu and measles when the English colonized their islands in the 1800s. Understandably, make sure we get in there. The result of these interactions is often hostility and distrust toward the outside world. Thus, the Sentinelese have a penchant for shooting arrows at anyone attempting to observe them. For this reason, they have remained the most secretive of uncontacted tribes. The only knowledge we do have of them comes from observation by helicopter and boats out of range of their projectiles. We know so much about tribes like the Awa, Jarawa, and Yanomami because a portion of their population has made appeals to mainstream society. threats to their way of life have forced them to come to terms with their neighbors. One of the tragedies that these tribes face is that if overcoming illness wasn't challenging enough, corporate and government interests have continually threatened the group's livelihood, and society as a whole often turns a blind eye to or outright exploits these people. In Brazil, logging, both legal and illegal, and poaching have increasingly encroached upon the land of the 20 or so tribes that live there. As the Amazon is rapidly stripped of its natural resources, the Awa have already lost 34% of the forest on their legally protected reserve. On the Andaman Islands, the Jarawa are harassed by so-called human safaris, where tour groups attempt to spot members of their tribe. Meanwhile, illegal hunting and fishing have threatened their food supply. The Jarawa have reported attacks and sexual abuse at the hands of outsiders, including a 2011 incident where poachers gravely injured a youth. These incidents almost always go unprosecuted and reflect a cool indifference toward their plight. These tribes carry on traditions dating back tens of thousands of years, making them older than all of modern civilization. It's estimated that the Sentinelese and Jarawa have thrived for 55,000 years. While they are often looked down on as primitive, in fact, these tribes are extremely complex. Their uniqueness should give us pause to reflect on how wonderfully diverse the human race is. What secrets are buried at Area 51? For decades, if you asked government officials about Area 51, they'd say there was no such thing or place. But clearly something unusual has long been going on roughly 83 miles northwest of Las Vegas in the Nevada desert. Ever since President Dwight D. Eisenhower established this 38,400-acre patch of dry lake bed as some sort of top-secret site in the 1950s, the name comes from the Atomic Energy Commission's grid numbers system on maps. Speculation has swirled that it was used for experiments on recovered UFOs and aliens. Some have also alleged the moon landings were staged there, or that Area 51 was used to help cover up the reputed Roswell, New Mexico spaceship crash. All of these claims had predictably been met with stony official silence, and government maps showed only a big blank spot. Then in 2017, when the Pentagon confirmed spending $22 million on a program to analyze anomalous airspace threats, including reported close encounters with UFOs, talk of Area 51 being all that it was rumored to be intensified. In reality, though, the site's likely been used to test spy planes and stealth fighters, which would account for any bright lights, loud noises, and occasional discoveries of bizarre scrap metal. Despite any logical explanations about things seen at or recovered from the location, the imaginations of many continue to run wild. In 2019, college student Matthew Roberts created a Storm Area 51 They Can't Stop All of Us event on Facebook as a joke. Still, more than 2 million confirmed their attendance, resulting in the Air Force rushing to issue warnings that everyone needed to keep out. About 40 still ventured to the outskirts of the base before being turned away. Then in 2020, the Pentagon announced a new task force would be looking into UFO reports, and it later released videos of Navy pilots encountering speeding foreign objects. Both moves reignited public interest in conspiracy theories about Area 51, complicating the struggle to dissuade people from infiltrating the site. As Annie Jacobson, author of Area 51, An Uncensored History of America's Top Secret Military Base, told CNN, Area 51 is among the most mysterious, most secretive bases, which only adds to the public fascination and lore with it. Speaking of aliens, let's read about Space Odyssey. Life on Mars. As NASA has announced plans to send astronauts back to the moon by 2024 and manned missions to Mars by the late 2030s, simulacrums. I've never heard this word ever in my life. Simulacrums of interstellar space voyages have been popping up all over our planet. From Florida to China, researchers have experienced close encounters of the invaluable kind at these terrestrial outposts located in deserts and underwater that recreate the challenges and excitement of life beyond Earth's boundaries. First, we have the Mars Desert Research Station in Utah. At the end of the unfortunately named Cow Dung Road in the desert of southern Utah, this 40-acre mock research center hosts teams of 6 astronauts, usually engineers and researchers, who live for months at a time as though they were 140 million miles away, rather than a mere 7 miles away from Duke's Slick Rock Diner in the town of Hanksville on planet Earth. The location was chosen because of its stark landscapes. Its geology is nearly identical in age and appearance to that of Mars. The simulated space base features a geodesic dome, observatory, and a 2-story cramped cylindrical habitat, which is only 26 feet wide. Inhabitants pay up to $1,500 for a 2-week stay and are not permitted to leave the station sans a spacesuit or without waiting 5 minutes inside a simulated pressurized airlock. Walkways between the structures are covered in tarps to mimic the tunnels that protect against the harsh Martian temperatures, which can fall to as low as minus 195 degrees at night. Run by the Mars Society, a non-profit space exploration advocacy group with 10,000 enthusiasts from more than 40 countries, the base is funded by donations, including $100,000 from SpaceX founder Elon Musk. "We are the Martians," Hanksville Mayor Kim Wilson told the Los Angeles Times. "They are the aliens." Next is Mars Base 1 in China. Plopped in the middle of the Gobi Desert, this rugged installation is a sign of China's desire to compete with the United States in the race to explore the Red Planet. The base is still on Earth. It's not on Mars, but we have chosen a landform that matches closest to Mars, said facility founder Baikonur. The nearly $6 billion complex boasts a dome and 9 modules, including living quarters, a control room, a greenhouse, and an airlock. Visitors are also invited to go on organized exploration missions through the Mars-like desert landscape. While the research station in Utah is focused on scientific discovery, Mars Base 1 plays more to science fiction and is open to space-obsessed students. Though scientists have criticized C-Space, the company behind the project, for not setting a course for scientific accuracy, there are plans to sink another $370 million into the base in hopes of attracting 1 million visitors by a year by 2030. Future updates to lure tourists include a space-themed hotel and restaurant. Fried Mars bars, anyone? Here's the Aquarius Reef Base in Florida. 9 miles off the coast of Key Largo, Florida, and 63 feet beneath the surface of the crystal-clear water of the Aquarius Reef Base, which is used by NASA astronauts to practice space exploration techniques as part of its Extreme Environment Mission Operation, or NEMO, program. The underwater lab is approximately the size of an international space station or a school bus, and accommodates 4 to 7 astronauts for up to 3-week training missions simulating zero or low gravity situations. The space station beneath the waves is supported by a 33-foot diameter surface support buoy that supplies air, electricity, high-speed internet, and communications. Since 1957, more than 65 offshore underwater laboratories have been built around the world, but Aquarius is the last one still in operation today. Next is the Flashline Mars Arctic Research Station in Canada. Nestled on Baffin Bay's desolate Devon Island in the Canadian High Arctic, the Mars Society's Flashline Mars Arctic Research Station, or FMARS, is said to have the most red planet-like environment of any of the simulation sites. The largest uninhabited island in the world, Devon offers an unforgiving tundra so extreme it is home to scant wildlife except muskox and small birds. The temperatures climb only as high as 50 degrees in summer and as low as negative 58 degrees in winter. The Houghton Impact Crater, where the base is located, is the summer home to NASA's Houghton Mars project, where a group of 10 researchers, scientists, and students conduct geological, botanical, and other studies each season. The goal is to develop and test new technologies and procedures for Mars explorers to study the challenges humans will face living in such unforgiving conditions. Next is high seas in Hawaii. Located in an isolated spot on the slopes of the Mauna Loa volcano on the Big Island of Hawaii, the Hawaii Space Exploration Analog and Simulation, or High Seas Habitat, offers a shockingly Mars-like landscape at an elevation of 8,200 feet above sea level. 6-member crews of NASA-funded scientists and researchers from around the globe inhabit the 2-story geodesic dome, where they work in a space station environment for periods as long as a year. They eat freeze-dried meals, take 30-second showers to conserve water, and must wear spacesuits every time they leave the dome. To replicate the communication gap between Earth and Mars, they wait 20 minutes for their emails to reach family members and another 20 for return messages. Scientists also wear devices to track their vitals, answer endless questionnaires about their behavior, and write in their journals regularly to give mission commanders a grasp of what astronauts will experience on long-range space voyages. Here's the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The home to Borat's original and subsequent movie films also happens to be the birthplace of Soviet space exploration, and now it's open to the general public. The site was where the Soviets launched the first Sputnik satellites and where cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin blasted off to become the first man in space on April 12, 1961. The largest space center in the world, Baikonur Cosmodrome remains active today, launching astronauts from all over this planet to the International Space Station. Space travel fans from the far reaches of Earth are also invited to explore the historic center and witness new launches. 5-day tours detail the history of the Soviet space program and offer up-close looks at the rollout of rockets and blastoffs for new missions. The Space Center is leased to the Russians by the country of Kazakhstan until 2050, so you have time getting over there. In the words of Borat, it's very nice. Oh, and that's the end. So, thank you for joining me as we read through this book. Let me know if you've seen all the parts of it now or managed to stay awake through them. And don't be sad because I have another one with lots more places and lots more to explore. So don't worry. We'll read that one on a later day. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a very good night. Good night. Good night. Good night.